living not necessarily in a state of well-being and clarity and that sort of thing. And so the direction I like to look in, like, is when a person has any goal that they want to achieve, whether that goal is material success or a certain feeling state or whatever it is, they will almost by definition, Aaron, use their existing understanding of how life works to achieve that goal.
Right.
Now, I'll give you an extreme example. Lots of people have the goal to feel better. Amy Winehouse, one of my favorite singers, sadly died this last weekend. Amy used her existing understanding of how life works to feel better. Right. And that resulted in, extreme issues with alcohol and drugs, and I don't know what the latest is, but may have resulted in her untimely death. She was using her existing understanding of how life works to achieve that goal.
Okay.
And that's an extreme example, but you've probably met as many people as I have who have strived for the external trappings of success on the idea that that would give them a life that they love, and found that it didn't work.
Yes.
And so I'm looking in a different direction with people. I'm looking to give them a more accurate understanding of how life works. And when I say give them, it's not even give it to them. I'm looking to create the conditions where they see for themselves more clearly about how life works. Because then what we find is that there's almost this self-correcting process that gets initiated, a learning curve that has them experience life more richly and deeply, that has them enjoy life as it already is, as well as being a lot more fearless and inspired about whatever they want to create in their lives, whatever they want to bring into being.
So showing them that way, is that through a means of explaining to them things like the three principles, asking them questions in a certain way, or giving them tasks that they go away and do, or what?
I mean, most of it in my coaching is just conversational, just having a conversation, highlighting the areas where they may be lost in superstition. Though I don't necessarily put it like that, but you got to understand that as a society, we are mystified by all kinds of superstitions. And when I say superstition, my favorite example of this is that in the old days, like God, as recently as 200 years ago, people thought that diseases were caused by bad smells, and they called them miasmas, and things that we absolutely know as obvious about disease transmission and that sort of thing were just unknown to them. And so they had an understanding of how life worked that was it was wrong-headed. It wasn't, innocently. They didn't know no better because they didn't have microscopes and they didn't know about, biology and all that sort of stuff to the degree we do now. But they just had a misunderstanding about it. And that misunderstanding resulted in all kinds of bizarre rituals and behavior, like carrying around little posies, little bunches of flowers to keep illness away.
Yeah.
It turns out that was just a superstition. It had no beneficial effect. But you can guarantee that in those days, if you said to someone, "Hey, can I borrow your posy for the afternoon?" they'd be like, "No, we're in a high plague area. I need to carry mine."
Yeah.
It's like it's having no effect, but it looks to them like it is having an effect. By the same token, things which we now know are really dangerous, like dumping sewage into the water supply, they felt fine about that. In fact, that's what they did in 1854, just before the first the Soho cholera outbreak, in which like 650 people were killed in a couple of weeks because they misunderstood the nature of illness. They just had a fundamental misunderstanding about it. And once someone saw more clearly the pre-existing truth about how life works, literally, you and I, Aaron, we probably wouldn't be here today if it weren't for the discoveries back then about how disease works and how disease transmission works and that sort of thing, and the subsequent development of penicillin and that sort of stuff. You, me, and millions of other people wouldn't be around today if it wasn't for those discoveries. And so I like to look at modern life in the same way, that there are things that we do today which look absolutely rational and sensible to us, which are actually bonkers. That 100 or 200 years from now, people will look back and laugh in the same way that we might, cock a smile at someone who carried a posy 200 years ago. And there are things that we're understanding today which are totally screwing us up based on superstition.
And I think sometimes with so much things trying to take up our attention, we could think something's true, only because we haven't taken the time to actually think about it and say, is that actually true? Is that actually a real explanation of why this is the way that it is? And I think kind of the benefit of coaching might be is that it'll be the first time for someone to sit back and someone say, is that actually true? Would you say? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And of course, if a coach is pointing someone in a certain direction, the quality of the amount of help they can give someone looking in that direction is going to be determined by their own understanding.
Okay. Well, if we look at coaches themselves and look at kind of like the struggles that sometimes they go through, and you've done a number of programs where you work with coaches and things like that, what would you say the traits are that separate the successful ones, the ones that can be defined as regularly seeing clients and charging a premium, to those that are struggling? They all have the same intention and maybe the same desire. Is it just better marketing, or is there other fundamental things going on?
Well, I think it can look from the outside like better marketing, but if I look at a bunch of the best paid and most successful and most impactful coaches I know, who are living a life that they really enjoy and that I like being in connection with, they all market in very different ways, and they all reach people in ways that are a good fit for them, and so I have just a few kind of rules of thumb, which is just in general for anything. It's not just for coaches, it's for anyone. Is number one is visibility. You need to be visible to the people that you want to work with. Now, I have one friend, he's a coach, and he only works with like between 5 and 8 people a year. So he doesn't have to be visible to very many people. So he doesn't use, big email lists or lots of blogging or anything like that. He likes going to parties and hanging out with people, so he does that. He goes to parties, has fun, meets interesting people in a variety of places, and picks up coaching clients like that.
That sounds like a fun way of getting clients.
Well, yeah, his whole marketing strategy is have fun and meet interesting people. His marketing budget is 0, and he makes a very healthy 6-figure sum. I know someone else who's putting out video all the time, really great videos, and that's how he reaches the people, because he loves doing that. But the thing is, he enjoys the hell out of it. He has fun tinkering around with his videos and making them better and that sort of thing. So he's found a way that really works for him to get visible to the people he wants to be visible to.
Okay.
So the first thing that I see with all the coaches I know who are enjoying their lives, who are making a difference to other people, who are making a living that they're enjoying, is they're visible to the people they're here to serve.
Right.
The second thing is they all give value. They give a lot of value, and so they've got great skills, if you want to call it skills, or great ability. They can really make a difference to people. And that's the thing I see lots of coaches going, I got to get my marketing skills up and all that sort of thing. And I respect that, and I would recommend that you find out ways of doing it that work for you. But there's something deeper. And I said this a couple of years ago, that lots of people will come up to me and go, how do you get clients to sign up for big, high-end programs and that sort of thing? I said, well, you got to let them know that you can deliver the goods. And they're kind of like, oh, well, I'm a really good coach. I'm good at coaching. I can deliver the goods. I said, well, that's fine. You just got to let them know that. And they say, oh, well, how do I let them know that? I said, well, that's really easy. When you know, they'll know.
Right.
When you actually know, like to the core of your being, that you can make a real difference to people, then they'll know too. But what I find is most coaches don't know that. Most coaches are insecure about the difference they can make to people. And so I think that a big part of it is really developing mastery of your craft, whatever form that takes, whether it's through just working with lots of people, or whether it's through going on training programs to deepen your skills, or whether it's studying, or whether it's, working on yourself to get, a better understanding of how your own life works. All those things that contribute. I don't want to call it developing yourself, because I think that when people understand how life works, they realize that who they already are doesn't need any developing. Right. But it can be the letting go of the superstitions and stuff that get in your way. So I think that's the second thing, is be able to really deliver real value. Now again, this applies to everyone, not just coaches, but if you're really delivering big value to people, like making a big difference in their lives, it makes it a lot easier to ask for a sum that you're worth, and it makes it a lot easier to get business and that sort of thing. I find a lot of what holds coaches up, it looks like a marketing problem because they're not getting out there and doing the marketing, but it's actually an insecurity about their own ability to deliver the goods, which is stopping them getting out there and asking for business and getting out there and doing it. Okay. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing that I see is a lack of insecurity.
Okay.
A lack of insecurity. And when it's natural as human beings, our quality of mind goes up and down. Sometimes we feel very secure in ourselves. Other times we feel insecure. But because people have a misunderstanding about what those feelings of insecurity are telling them, they then get into all kinds of superstition about what they need to do to get better at it, or they go, I need to go on more training courses before I can get clients, and that sort of thing. And so I think it's having having a lack of insecurity and being willing to get out there and do something. And so again, I mention that because these principles, people see these principles for themselves, the insecurity starts to diminish. And I'll give you an example. One of my clients, she came to her first event with me, and I was speaking to the group about these principles, about the inside-out nature of life and how it all works. And then I saw her a week later, and I said, how's it going? How's it been since we last saw each other? And she said, well, it's been pretty amazing. She said, I've always been terrified of speaking at my team meetings. She's got a job working in software.